Lynn Cherry. She is the United States champion of pickleball. Now, when I say champion, I mean she's she has a great podcast, the biggest podcast in the world, I believe, on pickleball. She has a great magazine. Pickleball is a wonderful sport. We have a serious issue in this country with exercise. It's just people getting out. Pickleball is the perfect antidote for it. It's not too demanding on the body. Um, I don't want to say you can't get hurt, but it's difficult to get hurt. There's not a lot of impact. It's played on a smaller court, badminton size. You play with a paddle and a large kind of wiffle ball. But look up pickleball YouTube videos. You'll see some great rallies going back and forth. There's a whole set of rules. It's not complicated at all. There's maybe 4 or 5 rules. I haven't played it yet, but I do have the equipment. I plan on playing it very, very soon, this week, in fact. I can't wait. I do play golf, I play tennis, and I would like to add pickleball as well. It's a wonderful sport. If you're a competitive junkie, it has that. If you just want to get a little bit of exercise, get your heart beating a little bit, it fits that bill as well. But pickleball, a wonderful sport. It's about 50 years old, made from a family in Washington. Wait till you hear why they call it pickleball. Lynn will tell you in this conversation. Pickleball, people, take a look at it. Get out there. Tell your friends. Walk around a little bit. Get some exercise. You're going to love this conversation with Lynn. She's great, great podcast, great magazine. Pickleball. Take a look. I must have said pickleball at least 30 times in this 1 minute. You're probably annoyed. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Lynn Cherry, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
It is great to be here today.
Pickleball. I couldn't believe how I can't believe how light the ball is. It's really really cool sport. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. It's kind of hard to find a good place to play and some opponents because it's so new, but it's very exciting. Tell me about your love for pickleball.
My love for pickleball started almost 4 years ago now. And I moved to Connecticut from Texas after living there for 25 years and growing up in Southern California. So I moved into the very cold Northeast and I'm wondering, what am I going to do during the winter? And I've always been very active and into sports. So I looked at the local recreation center and they had something called pickleball. Now, granted, I, at that time, like many people, still had not heard of this sport, which has been around since 1965. But I went ahead and went to the local gym just to peek in the door to see them playing the sport. And I thought, wow, this looks like a great game. I'm sure I'm going to love it. And I was about to walk away. And as soon as, because I was only there for a minute, somebody comes up and says, "Hey, do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't have a paddle. I've never played. I don't know anything about the game." They said, "Oh, no problem." They go over to their bag, they pull out one of their own pickleball paddles, put it in my hand, and say, "You got to try it. You got to try it." So I did for about 10 minutes. And then I had to head out to dinner. But as soon as I was done with dinner, I immediately went to Dick's Sporting Goods and bought a paddle.
Huh. You were hooked.
Oh, no doubt. And you know what? There are so many people who are hooked. It's really amazing. I did a survey recently of about 1,500 pickleball players and asked them if they plan to keep playing over this next year because, think about New Year's resolutions and whatnot.
Sure.
And I swear 99.9% of them said, "Oh, yeah, I will absolutely be playing pickleball."
Very cool. Can I ask what town in Connecticut? Because I live and from Wallingford, north of New Haven.
Oh, I live in Bristol and I
Ah,
play
Bristol.
in Southington and
Oh, yeah.
Cheshire
Huh.
and West Hartford.
Of course. Very cool. I'm down in Tampa for the winter because I'm empty nest now, but I will be back. Very, very cool. And so the origins of pickleball. So a family in Washington State made it in the 60s?
If you can imagine that, pickleball, even though a lot of people still have never heard of it, it was invented in 1965. So actually, that's pretty close to my age. But
Me too.
yeah, it was yeah, it was a group of people getting together, with their families. It was probably Labor Day or Memorial Day. It was during the summer. They had planned to play badminton, but they didn't have all the equipment that they needed. So, I guess they had put up the net or something and they're like, "Oh, well, we've got some ping pong paddles." And they also were like, "Well, how about a wiffle ball, kind of that light plastic ball like you were talking about."
Sure. Sure.
And they decided to lower the net because they, had a lot of kids and, there was some people, lots of adults and one of the gentlemen was very tall. So they lowered the net so it is roughly the height of a tennis net. So, yeah, I mean, that's how the game got started, and it's just gone crazy the last couple years.
Very interesting. And the racket. Oh no, I'm sorry. A paddle. We call it a
Mm,
paddle.
mhm, yep.
It's bigger than a ping pong paddle. It's a little more square. And so let's talk about the rules. What's the kitchen?
Well, yeah, everybody that's the first thing you'll hear when you learn the rules just about,
Right.
is that you cannot step into the kitchen, which is an area 7 feet from the net on both sides of the court. You cannot step into that area and hit the ball in the air. So, essentially, you cannot volley the ball in that area. If the ball bounces, you can step in and hit the ball no problem. But the reason for that rule, again, is that because it was a game invented by a family, they didn't want the adults or, anybody really tall to have an advantage at the net. Much
Right.
like you would in tennis or even volleyball, the taller you are,
Mm.
the more advantage you have. So they kind of set the game up so that it equalized you regardless of your body type.
Yeah, so it's the same size, the court itself, same size as badminton. I think it's like 20 by 44, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have like this kind of area marked off called the kitchen, like you said, 7 feet off the from the net. And when you serve, you got to serve in opposite quadrants, and it's got to bounce not only on the serve but on the return of serve. Correct?
You've got it. Yeah, honestly, those are some of the basic rules, and it really doesn't get too much more complicated than that.
Right. Can't bounce twice, gotta keep it within the court, obviously, it's much like tennis or badminton, after that, and, I mean, you type it in, YouTube, and you see some incredible plays, some quick motion around the back and between the legs and just bop, 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 going back and forth, is great.
That's the thing about the game is that if you wanna play it really competitively, you can do that. You can play in
Mm,
tournaments. They even have a pro tour. They've got a pro
yeah,
tour or senior pros, and then they've got regular pros. But if you just wanna have fun with the game and have it be really social and something that is very intergenerational, it provides that opportunity. As I mentioned, there's a couple rules in pickleball that kind of equalize the playing field, so to speak. And that's why you can have a 70-year-old playing with a 20-year-old, and they
right.
can absolutely positively be competitive and, play and compete and also have fun.
Yeah, and it adds an extra layer of kind of, a social element. Since it's a little bit smaller, it's a little more intimate. Whereas tennis, you're so far from each other, and it's just a bigger court, and it just adds that level. And yeah, it equals out even the skill level. In tennis, they have a skill system. I think I'm around a 3.5 or something like that to 4, and they're able to have tournaments based on those kind of ratings. Is there one similar to in pickleball?
Absolutely. It is very similar rating system. The high level amateurs now go up to about 5.0. Anybody above that would be a professional, and the ratings are very similar. And as I mentioned, you've got somebody who's a 4.5 player, and they can play in a tournament with, being 70, say, and they can be in a tournament with
Hmm.
20-year-olds, and they are able to compete in the same division and be very competitive, do very well. The only catch is the way pickleball tournaments are, you might play, one division for 8 hours in a day, which is obviously a lot. And
Wow.
so, if you're older, you do tend to, if you're getting to the semis and the finals, you're probably going to be a little bit more tired than the 20-year-olds, but the skill level would be very comparable.
Very, very interesting. And so let's talk about injuries. So in tennis, we have tennis elbow, and golf we have kind of golf elbow, which is in between. I happen to play both sports, and ironically enough, I developed tennis elbow playing golf. So as far as I understand it, golf elbow is kind of the outside, and tennis elbow is kind of the inside of the elbow. Are there any common injuries in pickleball?
People will get some tennis elbow, but I think it's much less common because the
Hmm.
paddle itself, it's only about 8 ounces. And then the
Hmm.
ball is plastic, so it's light. And that's one of the things that makes pickleball attractive to all age groups is that it's not that hard on your body. It's not to say you
Right.
can't get injured, you certainly can, but I think that the injuries are much less frequent than in a sport like tennis, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't I can't wait to start playing it. And maybe we'll talk again when I start playing it. But I mean, as far as tennis, you're actually using your elbow. You're not using your wrist that much. In ping pong, table tennis, it's much more wrist. Is pickleball kind of in between?
There is not a lot of wrist action when
I
you
see.
play pickleball. It's a little bit more like tennis. Now, if you hit you serve underhand in pickleball,
Mm.
but if the ball is hit up high, you can certainly hit it overhead where you would use your wrist. So there's a couple occasions in pickleball where you use your wrist, but in general, you pretty much want to stay away from it.
And I don't I don't want to get too political here, but just it just seems that America has such an issue with obesity, overweight. We need to get out. We need to exercise. And something that's low impact, that's less likely to get hurt, like pickleball, just seems like the perfect solution. Get out there and get some sweat going on, and make it a little competitive. Make the hour or wherever go by quickly, and get some exercise at the same time. It seems like such a natural fit.
It is, and I think that's certainly why the game has just absolutely taken off. I've talked to people on my podcast
Yeah.
where they've lost 50, 75, 100 pounds
Wow.
just by playing pickleball. And honestly, it's
Wow.
something where people get addicted to it in a positive way. I mean, if you think about it, when, I kind of laid off and during the worst of COVID, stayed away from, playing pickleball and being around other people until I was, you know, ready to do that. And,
Hmm.
I was off for quite a while, so I had to work my way back into playing. And so, first I play 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then I'm working myself up to 2 hours, and that's really common in pickleball is that, people have play for 2 hours and then they'll say, oh, yeah, I've got to go. And then their friends will say, oh, come on, let's play another game. Well, 5 or 6 games later, they're still there. I mean,
Wow.
that's what's so amazing because even if you've never played a sport, you can enjoy it. So
Hmm.
I can't tell you that I've played with many people who have certainly never done a racket sport, probably not done any sports, and they come into the game, and the people who are, have played a little while will help them with the rules, help them practice, help them drill. They'll play games with them. So that's another thing in pickleball is that it's not so segregated like tennis where kind of you only like to play people your level.
Right.
It's kind of you drop in, you play pickleball. You could have somebody who's never picked up a paddle, or you could have somebody who's a very, very good amateur player, and they all play together.
That is a very big issue with tennis because if, at a 3-5, if I play, if I play a 2, it won't be fun for them. If I play a 5, it won't be fun for them, right? So you have to play somebody at your own level. Now, golf has a handicap system. While it's not perfect, it does try to lend itself to even out the competition. In pickleball, you're just kind of, I think you're kind of saying it's not really needed.
No, not you could still have fun even if you've got some disparity in skill levels. When
Hmm.
I play, I always go to a game or a match and I have something specific that I'm working on. So even if I play people who can't keep the ball in a rally as long, I can work on my serve, I can work on my
Ah.
serve return. There's always something that you can work on, regardless of who you're playing.
Hmm. And is there a main governing body to pickleball, like the USTA equivalent?
There's a number of governing bodies, for
Oh
there
boy.
is USA Pickleball for the US and a lot of other, like you've got the Canadian equivalent, but there's also the International Federation of Pickleball, which now has probably almost 70 member countries. And that's the organization, the group that's going to bring pickleball to the Olympics. And actually, I'm
Whoa.
a yeah, I'm affiliated with them because I put out a magazine too, the Pickleball Fire magazine, and that's actually the official magazine of the International Federation of Pickleball.
So there's lots of controversy over what, because I know they took out like wrestling and they took out a bunch of, they added golf, by the way. I'm talking about the Olympics. And there's lots of controversy there. And when will pickleball be in the Olympics?
That's a bit of an unknown at this point,
Oh,
but in terms of how interestingly enough, I learned this recently. I did not know this, but basically, the sports that are included in the Olympics, that is up to the city that's hosting the Olympics.
wow.
Which is something that I didn't know until I spoke quite a bit with the president of the IFP and found that out. So the
Wow.
sports are already set, like for LA in 2028. And there's the sports that are part of the Olympics, and then there's exhibition sports. Both all of that is already set.
Huh.
So the soonest that, pickleball could potentially even be an exhibition sport would be after the LA Olympics in 2028. So, it'll be at least 10 years. But it
Wow.
takes a while to kind of work through that process and make it happen. But it's gonna happen.
And how about college level sports? I mean, here in the US, we use the college. I don't know if any other, Europe certainly doesn't do that, but college is a sport. College football is the biggest thing here with, after the NFL, with all the money it makes. So will there be a collegiate level pickleball league? Is there one already?
Right now, pickleball is a club sport for many universities. They
Hmm.
haven't made it into the official NCAA type of setting yet. And I know that a lot of people are really looking forward to that. I played with somebody recently when I was in Arizona, and I think he's a sophomore in high school, and he prefers pickleball over tennis. And
Wow.
he's hoping that they start giving scholarships, by the time, he's a senior. Things have happened so fast in the last 2 years. Potentially that could happen in that amount of time.
Yeah. Then it'll, if they're giving scholarships and it's at the college level, then it'll attract money and maybe sponsorship, and then that's where it really gains ground around this country. It needs money.
Well, it already has. I mean, recently there's 2 professional pickleball tours, and one of them
Really?
recently had a billionaire purchase it.
Wow.
Yeah, it is now on the map, And so it's, everybody sees it as, no doubt the next huge growth sport.
Very, very cool. And is it generally tennis players, racquetball players, badminton players that come over to it? Do you know like kind of the route to market?
The route to market, certainly, I can only tell you from experience. I would say 50% of the people that I know who play pickleball come from tennis, maybe 10% racquetball,
Hmm.
and 40%, probably 20% never played a sport, and 20% of, at least done something like running or
Uh,
biking or what have you. And that's actually a great survey question. I'm gonna have to throw that out to my to my audience.
yeah, I mean, I'm just excited about it. I was excited to talk to you, and I looked into it more, and then now I'm following it all over the place. And I ordered a racket, and I'm going to get some friends involved. I did notice that there are some courts near here. I'm in the Tampa area for the winter, I think I mentioned, but when I come back north, I'll definitely look at yeah, Cheshire. Cheshire's right in my back door. So the current iteration that we have of the sport and the current rule set, has there been a big change? Has it been an a rules evolution to the current iteration that we have now?
That's actually a great question. In 2021, there was a couple big rule changes, and it, one of them had to do with serving, and the other one had, well, actually, both of them had to do with serving. One of
Hmm.
them had to do with, the original rule in pickleball is that you had to contact the ball in the air, so it could not bounce on the ground before you hit it. Now, there's many people find that hard to do, so they wanted to make it easier for beginners. So now you can also drop the serve, or drop the ball, have it bounce, and then hit your serve. So there's
Ah,
other rules, associated with how you serve, but essentially it is an underhand serve. It is not an overhead serve. And really the reason for that is pickleball is much more of a game about precision and
mm,
strategy than
mm,
power. So
right.
tennis is definitely more power oriented.
Mhm.
Pickleball is not so much that way. It is has much more to do with how precise you can hit your shots, and really strategy too. So that was one serving related rule that was a big change. The other one was that it used to be in pickleball, if you hit a serve and the ball hit the net and it landed in the area where it was supposed to, then you could
Led.
hit another serve. But now if it hits the net and it goes into the box that it needs to be in, you actually play it. So
Wow.
that's yeah, so that's, the other rule would have been similar to tennis, but the new rule
Yeah.
is different. So
Very interesting. Yeah, we call that a Latin tennis, and they get 2 new serves. That's so do you get 2 serves?
just one serve
Oh,
in
I
pickleball.
see. But you have to serve to score, which is different than tennis.
That's right. You can only score points when you serve. Typically games are played to 11 points and you have to win by 2.
Gotta win by 2. Yeah. So the one rule you mentioned about the bounce, so you're behind the baseline, and you're saying that some people like to drop the ball, let it bounce, and then again, you've got to swing underhand below your waist, the paddle below your wrist into the diagonal quadrant. So you can do that now, whereas you couldn't before.
That's correct. That's correct.
Huh.
And, it's typically easier for people who are just starting to play to be able to bounce the ball first and then hit their serve. It's just mechanically there's just kind of less moving parts, so it's easier to do. And actually, I serve like that because I was a former racquetball player, and so
Ah.
I'm used to bouncing the ball first and then hitting it. So that's my style also.
And again, the ball is like a wiffle ball, but it's more the size of like a softball. It's larger, correct?
It's kind of in between a baseball and a softball.
I see.
A little bit larger than a baseball, but it's, the ball, if you think about a wiffle ball, how sometimes the kids get those uh, plastic ball sets, with a little bat and a wiffle ball. That's essentially what it is.
Hmm. So if you're playing singles, After your serve and you win your point, you go to the other side and you alternate that way, like in
Yes,
tennis?
that piece would be similar to tennis, both in singles and doubles. And, you know, one thing I should mention is that I think 95% of pickleball play is doubles. And that's another
Mm.
reason why it's so social. It's just, you know, having four people on the court, you're close in proximity. And, you know, there's even professional pickleball players that I've had on my podcast, and they don't want to play singles because it is really hard to play pickleball singles, especially at a high level, because it's very, very difficult to pass an opponent when you play singles because the court is small. So you end up with very, very long rallies that rely much more on strategy and placement than on power.
Ah. So endurance comes into play.
Oh, yeah, especially in singles. Yes.
Yeah, because in tennis, when you play singles, the court is narrowed, but it doesn't seem like that makes a change. There's no change in pickleball. The court stays the same size.
That's true. Yeah, you are exactly right. There is no doubles alley like you would have in tennis. It is the same size regardless of whether you play singles or doubles.
Fascinating. And so with doubles, uh, when it's you and I are on the same team, I'm on the I'll call it the deuce side. Deuce and ad. Do we use that term?
The tennis players do, yes.
I see. It gets carried over. So if I serve, I win the point, and then you serve on your side to the opposite side, correct?
Right, that's right.
I don't move over. We always stay on our sides as far as serving is concerned.
No, actually, sorry, I may have mis thought about what you had said. If I'm on the ad side or the do side and we win the point, then I do switch to the other side
So you
and serve
keep
the ball.
serving.
Yes,
I
yes.
see. I see. You keep serving until we lose, till we lose a serve or win the game.
Yeah, I would keep serving until we don't score a point, and then my partner would also have a chance to serve. And then if my partner, you know, if we essentially have a side out, then the other team gets to serve. So if you're playing doubles, both people on each team always get to serve kind of within the same rotation.
Ah, I see. I didn't realize that. So you serve and we win a point and then you serve again and we lose that point. Then I on your team get to serve again.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
we don't lose the serve. And then once I lose, it goes to their side and both of them get to serve.
Correct.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Subtle changes. Very interesting. And then I noticed a lot of the I'd call them pros. I can't tell who's not a pro or not a pro, but some actually use two hands when they're swinging the paddle.
That's true. A lot of people who have that tennis background and use two-handed backhand
Yeah, I do.
will, yeah, use two hands on the paddle. And what's interesting about that is that coming from a racquetball background, I always just had one hand on my racket.
Mm.
But I've discovered the reason for putting two hands on my paddle is to get more power and to have more stability. So as my game has improved, as I play against people who do hit the ball harder, then I need to have more stability and power in my game. So that is absolutely something that I'm putting into my game. And you know, if you're a tennis player and you already do that, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, staying with it. Yeah, I just noticed in my tennis, and I just when I came down here to winter now, my club where I play golf has great clay tennis courts. So I just, kind of found my passion again in tennis. And I just noticed that I remember I went to a two-handed backhand just for those reasons. It was a little more stable and a little bit more power. Whereas one hand I would kind of, dink it a bit or kind of float it or backspin. Let's talk about that. In your podcast, you talk to these very excellent players who are not household names, which I hope become, but about spinning the ball, how you can actually spin the ball and cut the ball.
Right. Yeah. I've had a number of people on the podcast talking about spin. You can spin the ball when you serve it. So if you use just one hand, you can spin the ball before you serve. There's also a lot of spin involved when you return the ball on a serve. It really should be a slice return, kind of similar to what you might hit in
Mm.
tennis.
Mm.
With that wiffle ball, you can really put an amazing amount of spin on it. And, my background as a racquetball player, slice was natural. I've learned how to hit topspin, and topspin can also be very, very effective. So, and with that wiffle ball, essentially, you can hit lots of side spin, curving in different directions. So, as your game, in, as you increase in skill level, spin definitely becomes something that you can use to your advantage.
Absolutely. Now, racquetball, it's a very wristy kind of flipping, and you're going to the wall, and but in pickleball, it seems it translates a little bit more to the forearm and to the elbow we kind of mentioned before. Was that a difficult transition for you?
For me, no, not really. I mean, I can use my wrist more than most people in pickleball just because I had done it for so many years and played fairly high level racquetball. But I wouldn't really teach
Hmm.
that to anybody. And it's easier to be consistent if you keep your wrist firm. So definitely something that I highly recommend.
And as a kid, we would play wiffle ball, and while I wasn't that good at it, I had friends who would pitch that wiffle ball and make that bad boy, cut 3 feet before it got to the plate. So you could put a lot of English, a lot of junk on that ball in either direction, and plus it's played outdoors, so the wind becomes a factor as well.
That's true. You can play at a local park, certainly. There's so many dedicated pickleball courts that are being built. In fact, I think there's some new ones in Wallingford at Harrison Park that
Really?
they're going to start breaking ground on. Yes. I think they're supposed to be ready hopefully by May. And indoor here, because I'm still in Connecticut at the moment,
Yes.
even though I was in California for a month. But almost every YMCA nowadays will have pickleball in it. There's dedicated facilities throughout the country. There's one in Oxford, Connecticut, and any place that has a gym with basketball nowadays, they're inviting, people to play pickleball because if you think about it, there's so many people who are 50 and over who play pickleball, and so they can play during the day. So if you've got a basketball court, it's inside, it's not being used, we'll start put down some pickleball lines and you'll have actually I went to the YMCA today, and there's a 3-hour block for pickleball today, and I think I went about 1:30 or so, and because that's when it tends to be less busy. There was 3 courts, so you've got 4 people on a court, 12 people, and then there was 20 plus people waiting. So,
Wow.
just incredible.
Wow. Yeah, plus it's January, everybody's itching, to
Yep.
get out there. Now, but Lynn, uh, many people will get a new sport, will adopt it, will get infatuated about it, play, watch it. But you create the biggest podcast in the sport. You have the largest magazine. Why did you go to those extra levels for this sport? And why do you continue to?
Well, it's funny. It was right after I started playing, I'm like, "Ah, I really love this game." And so I started a website just, kind of as a hobby website,
Great website.
had no intentions with it other than just to share information for other players. And I did that for, I guess a year or so. And then really it was October of 2020 and I wasn't doing much, due
Mm.
to COVID. And I thought, I've got all this extra time. Other than go for a walk, which could be extremely cold, I'm not doing anything. So I thought, well, I actually do have a journalism background, had a bachelor's in communication, used to be a sports writer for newspapers and magazines. I thought,
Wow.
well, why not start a podcast? Because I'm used to interviewing people, even though I haven't done it in, 20 plus years. So I started the podcast and it was very well received. Typically on Mondays, I release an episode that has to do with, how to play. It's from a pro or a high level instructor. And then on Thursdays, I usually interview somebody from the industry, whether it's a paddle manufacturer or somebody running tournaments. And then I realized with the podcast, honestly, I had so much content from the interviews. I thought, well, there's not everybody listens to podcasts, even though we all do. Not everybody does. And given the demographics of pickleball, I thought, with all this content, I'm going to put out a digital magazine. So I started doing that in January. It's just been over a year that had the magazine going. So it's been quite a ride.
Incredible. And it's helping spread the game. I certainly wouldn't have, looked into it if I didn't, if we didn't contact each other. I mean, I certainly heard of it, but I wouldn't have. And I applaud you for doing that, taking your passion to the next level. It's amazing what's been kind of born out of being locked up for the darn pandemic, and you use your talents and kind of focus it in another area. It's really, really cool, and I applaud you for that, Lynn. On the podcast, um, we talk a lot about discipline. I lost a lot of weight, and people always ask me how, like it's some kind of magic trick or something, and like they're going to get some secret. And I just, well, it's just discipline. You seem like a disciplined person. Talk to me how discipline enters into your life.
I have to say, I think I've always been disciplined, and I think the combination that goes with that is that I can also kind of delay gratification. I think
Mm.
the podcast and the magazine, and even when I went to school, I actually have a doctorate degree in uh, cognitive in really in sports psychology.
Wow.
And that, so I had a lot of schooling, and I didn't really know what life was going to be like when I was done, because I chose not to go the academic route where I was teaching at a university. So that took a lot of discipline. It was a really tough program. I think there was 21 people who entered the program with me, half men, half women. Only 7 of us completed our PhD, and I was the only female, interestingly
Hmm.
enough. So it did take a lot of discipline and dedication to do what was needed, not only from an academic perspective, but also to support myself financially, because I was 29 years old when I started that program. So I wasn't
Mm.
wasn't really young. And so I've just been I can do things not knowing what if I'm going to benefit from something financially, and I'm perfectly okay with that as long as I enjoy it.
Hmm.
So it's kind of that delayed gratification in my case. I can stand it.
Delayed gratification. It's a wonderful sentiment and concept. I mean, as far as pickleball itself, I would see that there are some that would use it for exercise and recreation, and there are some that would use it for competition. And, because they need that as, some people just thrive on that. And there'd be a fairly amount of discipline in either case with that as well.
That's very true. And what I would say, for anybody who is thinking that they need to be more active, going and playing pickleball, it does not feel like punishment. Thinking
Mm.
about, oh, I got to go to the gym, I've got to run, I've got to ride the bike, I've got to lift weights. Very few people, I think, truly enjoy doing that. I can't tell you how many people love pickleball. They don't hesitate to get up off the couch and go do it. I mean, between it being easy on your body, it being incredibly fun, it being super social, it can be competitive, it can be so many different things that it just gives you that opportunity to be able to be successful and to be disciplined about something without a whole lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, with the obese and overweight numbers in our country, it's 75% or right around there. I mean, just you know, um, get out there. People want to walk. People, if you can't walk because you just find it boring or, like you say, punishment. All too often when I was a child, I played soccer, and punishment was go run a lap. I feel one of the worst things a coach could do, because you don't want to make exercise punishment. You want to have exercise as something that you want to do, that's inviting. But go out and play pickleball, something you get active, plus it's social, plus you get the heart rate going a little bit. And for those junkies who want the competitive, aspect, it's there as well. It just seems like it's a one size fits all. Lynn Cherry, what motivates you?
Oh, What motivates me? I tend to be intrinsically motivated. You know, I if I do things because I enjoy it.
Mm,
I can't if I don't enjoy something, I don't do it. So if I have in the past I've been in and out of the corporate world, and when I get to the point where I don't enjoy it, I take my leave.
mm.
And actually I did that here recently about 6 months ago. So I am I am all in on pickleball. Let's just put it that way
Wow.
because I love it.
Wow. Wow. Incredible. And how do you measure success?
How do I measure success? Ooh, I would have to almost give the same answer. Um,
Mm.
if I enjoy it and I'm improving and I'm progressing, and then that works for me.
Very, very well said. Well, the next time we talk, Lynn, I will have played numbers of hours of pickleball. I make that promise to you, and I will do it very soon. I have no excuse. It's 70 degrees here, and I know I just found some pickleball courts over the weekend. I'm going to order some equipment, and I'm going to rope some friends into it, and we're going to have some fun. And your podcast is excellent. You do a really great job of interviewing these people again, uh, which I hope become household names, and how they spin the ball and their attitude towards it. And I haven't seen your magazine. I look forward to subscribing to that. But Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. I want to the obesity epidemic is a serious one, perhaps the largest in our country. If we can get out and find a great exercise like this that can really check all the boxes and get us active again, everybody wins. Everybody wins.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so glad we could connect.
Me too. Lynn, thank you so much. You're an inspiration. I look forward to continuing to listen and to watch you. And when I get back north, we'll have a cup of coffee and also perhaps hit the pickleball a little bit. Is it called the
Absolutely.
pickleball? Is the ball called the pickleball?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
is.
So I heard that theory too. I didn't want to voice it until I heard it from you. But yeah, that's what I heard because nothing else resembles a pickle. And yeah, that's what I had read too, that it was named after the dog Pickle. Very, very cool. Lynn, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to finally meeting you face to face. And until then, we'll continue to watch and listen. You be well. Bye now. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.